Picture two men. The first drives a 5-year-old pickup truck, wears a 15-pound watch, and just had his boots resoled instead of buying new ones. The second leases a brand new BMW, wears a designer suit, and just put a long weekend in Dubai on a credit card. Ask 100 people which one is the millionaire. Almost all of them will point at the BMW. Almost all of them will be wrong. In the mid-1990s, two researchers spent years interviewing and surveying actual millionaires across America to find out what they really looked like, spent like, and drove. The answer surprised almost everyone who read it, and it's still surprising people 30 years later. This is The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas Stanley and William Danko.
Stanley and Danko weren't journalists chasing a hot take. They were academics. Stanley taught marketing and had spent over a decade studying affluent households for corporate clients trying to sell to the wealthy. What kept happening was strange. The data never matched the stereotype. The people with the highest net worth were rarely the people with the flashiest lifestyles. So the two of them built a proper study, survey data and interviews from hundreds of actual millionaire households to figure out who these people actually were. Published in 1996, the book went on to sell millions of copies and is still one of the most cited personal finance books ever written. Not because it's flashy, because it's one of the few books in this space built entirely on data about what wealthy people actually do, rather than what we assume they do. The book's central finding is a split between two types of people, even at the exact same income level. The first type, the authors call prodigious accumulators of wealth, PAWs for short. These are people who build far more net worth than their income would predict. They live well below their means, and the gap between what they earn and what they spend gets invested year after year. The second type they call under-accumulators of wealth, UAWs. Same income, sometimes higher, but almost everything that comes in goes straight back out. On the house, the cars, the holidays, the image. High income, low net worth. To tell the two apart, the book offers a simple formula. Take your age, multiply it by your annual pre-tax household income, divide by 10. That's roughly the net worth you'd expect if you're an average accumulator. Land meaningfully above that line, and you're a PAW. Fall meaningfully below it, and you're a UAW, no matter how impressive your salary looks on paper. There's a second distinction that matters just as much: balance sheet affluent versus income statement affluent. One group is actually wealthy. Assets, investments, net worth. The other group simply has a high number arriving in their account every month, with almost nothing left over to show for it once the bills, the leases, and the lifestyle are accounted for. Income is what people see. Net worth is what's actually true. The entire book lives in the gap between those two numbers. Across hundreds of households, the same handful of habits kept showing up in the people who'd actually built wealth. The book narrows it down to 7 recurring factors. They live well below their means, not occasionally, as a discipline. They are highly intentional about how they use their time, energy, and money, almost always in service of building net worth, rather than spending it. They care more about financial independence than about looking successful to other people. Their parents didn't subsidize their adult lifestyle. Their own adult children are expected to be financially self-sufficient, not propped up. They're good at spotting opportunities most people walk straight past. And this one surprises people. They often didn't pick their occupation because it looked prestigious. They picked it because it worked. None of these on their own sound dramatic. That's sort of the point. Wealth building in this book isn't a clever trick. It's closer to a quiet, repeatable habit that most people simply don't practice for long enough to notice it working. One of the book's most quoted findings is about cars. The popular image of a millionaire is somebody driving something German and expensive. The research found something close to the opposite. A large share of the actual millionaires surveyed drove ordinary, often several years old vehicles, frequently bought used, and felt no particular pull toward luxury badges. The same pattern showed up in watches, clothing, and houses. Plenty of the wealthiest people in the data lived in perfectly ordinary homes in perfectly ordinary neighborhoods, the kind of house you drive past without a second glance. Meanwhile, some of the most expensive-looking lifestyles in the survey belong to people with surprisingly little behind them. Big house, big car payment, big image, and a balance sheet that didn't match any of it. The book's argument isn't that spending money is wrong. It's that status and wealth are two completely different games, and most people are playing the one that doesn't actually build anything.
Here's the part of the book that tends to make people uncomfortable, because it cuts against something that feels obviously kind. The authors found that adult children who regularly received cash gifts from wealthy parents, help with a house deposit, a monthly top-up, money to cover a lifestyle gap, tended to accumulate less wealth than children from similar households who received little or no financial help at all. They call this economic outpatient care. The logic isn't that the money itself is harmful. It's that a regular cash cushion quietly removes the pressure that normally forces someone to build the habits in the last section: the budgeting, the restraint, the intentional saving. Why build the muscle if someone keeps holding you up? The children who seem to do best financially in the data were often the ones who got something far less comfortable than cash: an expectation that they'd figure it out themselves.
Ask someone to picture a millionaire's job, and you'll usually hear doctor, lawyer, banker. The data tells a different story. A large proportion of the self-made millionaires in the study were business owners, and very often in industries that sound almost deliberately unglamorous: scrap metal, pest control, vending machines, dry cleaning, paving contractors. The pattern wasn't the industry, it was ownership. These were people who owned the business, controlled the margins, and kept building equity in something year after year, instead of trading hours for a salary, however impressive that salary looked on a payslip. High-status professions can absolutely build wealth too, but the book's point is that status and net worth are, once again, separate variables. Plenty of the highest earners in glamorous careers were UAWs. Plenty of the wealthiest people in the data ran businesses nobody would ever guess from across a dinner table.
This book is almost 30 years old, and it shows in places. The exact net worth formula gets less reliable in a world where house prices and stock markets have moved so differently across regions and generations. Some of the original survey may also skew toward an older, more business owner-heavy generation of wealth than what younger earners look like today. But the core behavioral finding hasn't aged at all. If anything, it's gotten sharper. Social media has turned lifestyle comparison into something you carry in your pocket and refresh 40 times a day. The pressure to look like a UAW has never been higher, even as more people quietly try to live like PAWs in private. What's now sometimes called stealth wealth or quiet luxury, spending that signals nothing to strangers on purpose. The book predicted that tension decades before Instagram made it visible.
If you watched the net worth ladder video, this will land familiar. Remember the £870,000 tier? The one we said actually puts someone in the top 10% in this country? We described that person as unremarkable. Decades of saving, modest car, mortgage paid off. That's not a coincidence. That's a PAW. This entire book is the long-form, deeply researched case for why that person, and not the least BMW, is who actually tends to be sitting on the money. So, quick gut check. Take your age, multiply it by your income, divide by 10. Are you above that number or below it? Tell me in the comments. I'm curious how many of you land on each side. If you want to see what this actually looks like tier by tier, the net worth video is linked right here. It's the perfect companion piece to this one. This is Nexo Finance. Subscribe if you want more of this. I'll see you in the next one.